Don't sit at this table like you belong with us, Akinyi. You manage this house, you are not part of this family.
Sit, Akinyi. Tonight, your voice matters. Mother, what are you doing? I'm finally paying attention to what everyone else keeps overlooking.
Sit, Akinyi. Tonight, your voice matters. Her billionaire son Kamau stared at his mother in disbelief. Zuri laughed, unaware Nyambura had been watching them all carefully. If you were Akinyi, would you sit down or walk away? Tell us in the comments. The crystal pendant light above the Muriithi dining room sees warm reflections across the long walnut table, turning every wine glass into a small pool of gold. Outside the glass walls, the jacaranda trees of Rwanda moved gently in the Nairobi breeze. Inside, everything had been arranged with the kinds of effortless luxury that required days of careful work. Hand-woven runners from local artisans, white orchids in low ceramic bowls, polished brass candle holders, and linen napkins folded with exact precision. Akinyi Wanjala had arranged nearly all of it, yet she stood quietly near the sideboard while everyone else took their seats. She wore an emerald kitenji dress with a fitted waist and elegant gold detailing at the sleeves. It was more refined than her usual work clothes, but she had chosen it because Kamau Muriithi had insisted that the evening was not an ordinary family dinner. Akinyi still did not understand why. Kamau Muriithi sat near the head of the table in a charcoal suit without a tie. Across from him sat Zuri Ndegwa, elegant in sapphire blue, her polished smile as controlled as the diamond studs in her ears. Beside Zuri sat Thandi Mbeki, a South African architect whose burnt orange dress was modern, sculptural, and impossible to ignore. Nyambura Muriithi entered last. She wore burgundy silk with subtle gold embroidery and carried herself with the calm authority of a woman who had spent decades entering rooms where powerful men expected her to remain quiet. Everyone rose. Please, Nyambura said, sit. Akinyi reached for the silver water pitcher. Nyambura looked directly at her. Akinyi, put that down. Mom, come and sit with us. The room went still. There was one empty chair beside Nyambura. Akinyi assumed she had misunderstood. I can bring dinner first, you can sit first. Zuri let out a short laugh. Not loud, almost polite. That made it worse. Mrs. Muriithi, Zuri said, surely you don't mean at this table? Kamau looked at her. Why wouldn't she? Zuri's smile tightened. I only mean Akinyi is working tonight. Akinyi set the pitcher down carefully. I'm comfortable standing, Mom. Nyambura pulled the empty chair slightly away from the table. That is exactly why I'm asking you to sit. Thandi watched with open curiosity. Kamau looked from his mother to Akinyi. Mother, what are you doing? Having dinner. With Akinyi? Nyambura raised one eyebrow. She has eaten in this house more times than any of you. The only difference is that she usually does it after everyone else has finished. Akinyi felt heat rise beneath her collar. She disliked being turned into the center of a room, especially this room. Zuri leaned back. I hope this isn't some kind of social experiment. Nyambura smiled faintly. People usually call something an experiment when they are afraid they might reveal too much during it. No one answered. Akinyi sat. She did not shrink into the chair. She did not apologize. She placed her hands lightly in her lap and looked across the table. Nyambura seemed pleased. Dinner began with roasted pumpkin soup, followed by grilled tilapia, seasonal vegetables, and a fragrant pilau prepared by the kitchen team under Akinyi's supervision. For several minutes, the conversation remained safe. Business, architecture, travel. A hospitality project Kamau's company was developing near Naivasha. Then Nyambura placed her spoon down. I invited all of you tonight because I have been thinking about marriage. Kamau sighed. Mother, relax. I'm not announcing yours. Zusi smiled. Thandi laughed softly. Akinyi lowered her eyes to her plate. Nyambura continued. I've heard successful women ask the same question for years. What are you willing to sacrifice? She looked towards Zuri. What do you think? Zuri considered the question. Every ambitious woman sacrifices something. Time, privacy, sometimes even relationships. Success always has a price. Nyambura nodded. Thandi? Thandi folded her hands on the table. Freedom matters most to me. I would never marry someone who expected my career to become secondary to his, a reasonable answer. Then Nyambura turned toward Akinyi. And you? Akinyi blinked. I don't think I'm the right person to answer. Why? Because I'm not sitting here as Koma's potential partner. Zuri glanced at her with an amused expression. At least we agree on something. Kamau's jaw tightened. Zuri. What? She said it herself. Akinyi looked at Zuri. Her voice remained calm. I said I am not here as a potential partner. I did not say I lack the right to have an opinion. Silence. Thandi looked down, hiding a smile. Nyambura leaned slightly forward. So give us your opinion. Akinyi took a breath. I think women are asked too often what they are willing to give up. Nyambura watched her carefully. Akinyi continued. A career woman is asked whether she will sacrifice work for marriage. A married woman is asked whether she will sacrifice ambition for family. A woman who chooses herself is told she has sacrificed love. Kamau stopped touching his glass. Akinyi looked around the table. Perhaps the better question is why a woman must surrender something before the world considers her worthy of respect. The room became very quiet. Nyambura smiled, not triumphantly, almost proudly. Kamal looked at Akinyi as though he was seeing a paintings that had hung in his house for years but had never truly noticed. Zuri crossed her arms. That sounds beautiful, she said. But life isn't built on beautiful sentences. No, Akinyi replied. It is built on choices, and what have your choices built? The question landed harder than Zuri probably intended. Akinyi could have defended herself. She could have mentioned the certificate she was completing, the savings she had accumulated, or the business plan hidden inside a burgundy folder in her apartment. Instead, she smiled. A life I don't have to apologize for. Kamau's expression changed. Nyambura lifted her glass. To that. Thandi lifted hers. Kamau followed. After hesitation, Zuri did too. Akinyi stared at the glass in front of her. For years, she had stood beside this table, ensuring everyone else had what they needed. Tonight, for the first time, she had been asked what she thought. And somewhere across the polished walnut surface, Kamau Muriithi was beginning to realize that the woman who knew everything about his household had remained almost completely unknown to him. Kamau Muriithi stepped into the glass-walled reception hall of the family villa and stopped. Something was wrong. Or rather, several things should have been wrong. A hospitality investment delegation was expected for a private luncheon. One floral supplier had delivered the wrong arrangements. 2 additional guests had been added without warning, and a catering assistant had accidentally damaged part of the table setting. Yet the house looked flawless. Fresh white lilies stood beside woven Kenyan baskets. Sunlight spilled across the pale stone floor. Staff moved quietly between the dining terrace and kitchen without the frantic confusion Kamau had expected. At the center of everything stood Akinyi. She wore a fitted mustard yellow kitenge dress beneath a cream blazer, her tablet tucked against one arm. Move the smaller arrangement to the terrace, she instructed a staff member. It will look intentional there. A young assistant named Jerry approached nervously. Akinyi, I'm so sorry about the serving plate. Were you hurt? Jerry blinked. No, then we have already solved the most important problem. But it was expensive. Things can be replaced. Akinyi handed her a linen cloth. Help Joseph reset the side table. We'll use the handcrafted ceramic set instead. Jerry hurried away, visibly relieved. Kamau remained near the doorway. He had seen Akinyi work hundreds of times, but perhaps he had never actually watched her. Akinyi, she turned. Good morning, Mr. Muriithi. Kamau. Her eyebrow lifted slightly. You've called me Mr. Muriithi for years, and it has worked perfectly well for years. He almost smiled. What happened to the flowers? Wrong order. And the extra guests? Handled. The broken serving plate? Also handled. Kamau looked around. How? Akinyi gave him a puzzled expression. By solving the problems. The simplicity of the answer amused him. You make it sound easy. It isn't easy. Looking panicked simply doesn't make it easier. Before Kamau could respond, the catering supervisor entered. Akinyi, we have another problem. Tell me. The supplier says the specialty coffee Kamau requested wasn't included. Kamau frowned. I specifically approved that order. Akinyi opened her tablet. You did. She showed the supervisor the confirmation. Call them again. Ask for Miriam in dispatch and give her this reference number. She confirmed it personally. The supervisor nodded and left. Kamau stared at her. You remember the dispatch manager's name? I remember people's names. That sounds like criticism. It wasn't. Somehow it felt like one. This time Akinyi smiled. Then she walked toward the terrace. Kamau followed. Akinyi? Yes? What exactly is your job here? She stopped. You employ me. Shouldn't you know? The question embarrassed him more than he expected. I know you manage the household. That description covers everything and explains nothing. So explain it. Akinyi studied him, apparently deciding whether he genuinely wanted an answer. I coordinate staff schedules, household purchasing, maintenance contractors, event preparation, vendor negotiations, guest requirements, and inventory. I also supervise budgets for major functions, resolve problems before your family needs to know they existed. Kamau looked back toward the perfectly arranged room. That sounds less like housekeeping and more like operations management. Titles often depend on who is doing the work. Something in the sentence stayed with him. Akinyi walked toward a table where locally produced coffee, tea, and small gift boxes had been arranged for the visitors. Kamau noticed a folder beside her tablet. Across its cover were the words, Hospitality Operations and Property Management. You're studying? Akinyi closed the folder. I'm completing a professional certification. Why didn't I know? She looked genuinely confused. Why would you? Because you work in my home. That means you should know whether I do my job properly. It doesn't automatically give you access to everything I'm building outside it. Kamau absorbed the correction. There was no hostility in her voice. That somehow made it more effective. What are you building? Akinyi hesitated. A future. That sounds deliberately vague. It is. He laughed softly. Fair enough. A member of the catering team hurried past carrying a tray. Akinyi noticed that the woman's hands were trembling. Wambui. The woman stopped. Put it down for a moment. I'm fine. You're carrying crystal assets while telling me your hands are shaking because you're fine. Wambui reluctantly lowered the tray. Akinyi handed her a bottle of water. Take a few minutes. Joseph can cover your section, but I don't want anyone thinking I can't handle the work. Resting when you need to is part of handling the work. Kamau watched the exchange. No lecture, no performance, just attention. When Wambui left, he said, You do that often. Do what? Notice things. Someone has to. Kama leaned against the edge of the table. You know, if you're capable of all this, you could have asked my mother for a different position years ago. Akinyi's expression changed, only slightly. Asked her for what? A management title. More responsibility. Connections. Whatever would help. I already have responsibility. Then a better opportunity. She placed the tablet down. I don't want a favor, Kamau. I didn't say favor. You didn't have to. He fell silent. Akinyi continued calmly. I've watched wealthy families help people because they like them. Sometimes that kindness changes a life. But sometimes it also leaves the person wondering whether they earned their place or were simply invited into it. And you don't want that. I want an opportunity I can defend with my work. Kamau looked at her for several seconds. What if someone recognizes your work and offers you that opportunity? Then I'll consider it, even if it takes you away from here. Akinyi's eyes met his, especially if it takes me somewhere I can grow. The answer unsettled him. He had always thought of Akinyi as part of the villa, the person who knew where everything belonged, which supplier could be trusted, what his mother preferred when guests stayed late. He had never considered that she might leave. Akinyi picked up her tablet. The delegation will arrive soon. You should probably review the presentation instead of interviewing your housekeeper. Operations manager, Kamau corrected. Akinyi paused. A small smile appeared. Not yet. Then she walked away. Kamau remained beside the table, watching her cross the sunlit room. The previous evening, Akinyi had challenged something in the way he thought about women. Today, she had challenged something more uncomfortable. For years, he had mistaken proximity for knowledge. He knew which universities Zuri had attended. He knew the international awards Tandy had won. He knew their favorite restaurants, travel preferences, and professional ambitions. But the woman who had quietly helped his family's complicated household function with precision had been reduced in his mind to a single word: housekeeper. Kamau looked toward the terrace, where Akinyi was already solving another problem. For the first time, he wondered how many capable women were overlooked not because they lacked ambition, intelligence, or talent, but because everyone had become too comfortable seeing them exactly where they were. Sunlight poured through the glass walls of the Muriithi Villa's garden lounge, illuminating 3 presentation boards arranged across a long oak table. Nyambura had called the women together for what she described simply as a useful afternoon. Akinyi suspected there was more to it. Zuri arrived first, wearing an ivory trouser suit over a cobalt blue blouse, her gold earrings catching the light whenever she moved. Thandi followed in a striking coral kitenge-inspired dress, carrying architectural sketches beneath one arm. Akinyi wore deep burgundy with patterned cuffs and brought only her notebook. Kamau stood near the windows. "Should I be worried?" he asked his mother. "Usually." Nyambura smiled, "But today you only need to listen." Zuri glanced at the presentation boards. "What exactly are we planning?" "A fundraising dinner," Nyambura replied, "for women running small businesses across Kenya." Thandi immediately became interested. "What kind of businesses?" "Textiles, food products, handmade cosmetics, ceramics, agricultural products, interior crafts, anything legitimate with potential to grow." Zuri nodded. "That could attract excellent press." Nyambura looked at her. "I'm hoping it attracts excellent opportunities." The distinction hung quietly between them. Nyambura explained that the event would take place at one of the family's boutique properties outside Nairobi. Businesswomen would exhibit their products while investors, hospitality executives, and potential buyers attended. "I want the 3 of you to help shape it," she said. Zuri smiled. "Then we need visibility." She walked toward the first board. "Influencers, business journalists, recognizable personalities. If we secure 2 or 3 major sponsors, the event immediately gains prestige." "That makes sense," Kamau said. Thandi stepped forward. "And the space matters. If the exhibition looks temporary, investors will treat the businesses as temporary." She began sketching. "I would use natural timber, woven partitions, and individual lighting for every display, sophisticated but still distinctly Kenyan." Nyambura nodded approvingly. Then she turned. "Akinyi?" Akinyi had been reading the preliminary budget. "I have a question. Of course, how much are the women being charged for exhibition space?" Zuri glanced over. "I thought this was a fundraising event." "It is." "Then charging vendors is normal." "I didn't say it wasn't." Akinyi pointed to a figure. "I'm asking whether anyone calculated what they must sell before they make a profit." Silence followed. Kamau walked closer. "What do you mean?" Akinyi turned the budget toward him. "If a woman travels from Kisumu or Nakuru, she pays transportation, possibly accommodation, packaging, stock meals. Then she pays this exhibition fee." She tapped the page. She could have a successful evening and still go home with almost nothing. Zuri crossed her arms. "Premium events cost money." "Yes, and free spaces sometimes attract businesses that aren't ready for serious investors." Akinyi looked at her. "Then evaluate the businesses by quality." Zuri's expression sharpened. "Not every applicant can receive special treatment." "I'm not suggesting special treatment." Akinyi remained calm. "I'm suggesting that an event claiming to support women should not make those women finance everyone else's experience." Kamau looked down at the numbers. Nyambura said nothing. Thandi moved closer to Akinyi. "What would you change? Reduce the vendor fee? That creates a gap in the budget." "Yes." "How do you close it?" Akinyi flipped several pages. "The sponsors." Zuri shook her head. "Sponsors expect visibility. Give them visibility." Akinyi pointed to Thandi's proposed layout. "Instead of giving sponsors the best exhibition positions, place their branding around the networking lounge and main stage." Thandi studied her sketch. "That could work. Then give the most visible product spaces to businesses selected for quality and growth potential." Zuri frowned. "You would put unknown vendors in the most valuable locations." Akinyi met her gaze. Isn't helping them become known the purpose? Kama suppressed a smile. Zuri noticed. This sounds admirable, she said, but wealthy investors expect a certain environment. Akinyi closed the folder, then give them one. I'm not sure you understand what those guests expect. The sentence was polished, so was the implication. Akinyi did not react defensively. I understand wealthy guests very well, Zuri. I have spent years making sure they are comfortable. Zuri paused. Akinyi continued, and that has taught me something useful. What? People with real influence rarely need to be reminded that they have it. Sandy looked down at her sketches, clearly hiding amusement. Kamau turned toward the window. Nyambura did not hide hers. Continue, Akinyi. Akinyi opened another page. Invite fewer vendors. Select them carefully. Give each woman enough room to explain her product properly. Create a buyer directory before the event so investors know who they want to meet. Kamau nodded. That turns it into more than a market. Exactly. A business matching event. Yes. Sandy tapped her pencil against the table. We could redesign the space around sectors rather than status. Fashion here, food and agriculture there, interiors and crafts along the garden. Akinyi smiled. That would make it easier for buyers. Zuri studied both women. And media? Still important, Akinyi said. But the story should be about the businesses, not about wealthy people attending an event for businesses. For the first time, Zuri had no immediate response. Nyambura finally spoke. When I started my first company, I attended a business reception where everyone wanted to photograph the minister who opened it. She looked around the room. No one photographed the women whose products were supposedly being celebrated. Akinyi listened. I never forgot that. Nyambura turned to Zuri. Visibility matters. Then to Sandy. Presentation matters. Finally, she looked at Akinyi. But neither matters if the people we claim to help live poorer than when they arrived. Kamau leaned against the table. I think we have our structure. Akinyi closed her notebook. We have a beginning. Nyambura smiled. Good answer. As the discussion continued, something subtle changed around the table. Zuri remained the strongest voice on media strategy. Sandy transformed the visual plan into something elegant and practical. Akinyi worked through logistics, vendor costs, and guest movement. No woman became unnecessary simply because another woman had a good idea. Kamau noticed that too. His mother had not gathered them together to determine who was prettier, more accomplished, or more suitable for him. She had created a room where their values became visible through their decisions. And Akinyi never once tried to win. That was what stayed with him. When the others began gathering their papers, Kamau approached her. You changed the entire event. Akinyi shook her head. We changed it. You could take the credit. I could. Why don't you? She slipped her notebook into her bag because being valuable and being the loudest person in the room are not the same thing. Kamau watched her walk toward the doorway. Behind him, the presentation boards were still filled with expensive ideas, beautiful designs, and ambitious plans. But one handwritten question remained circled on Akinyi's page. Will the women we say we are helping actually benefit? And Kamau realized that perhaps the most revealing thing about a person was not how beautifully they could build a table, but whether they remembered who the table was supposed to serve. The entrance hall of the Muriithi family's boutique property outside Nairobi glowed beneath suspended brass lights as guests began arriving for the Women's Enterprise fundraiser. The venue had been transformed. Sandy's design brought warmth to every corner. Woven Kenyan screens divided the exhibition areas. Handcrafted ceramic lamps illuminate individual displays. And arrangements of protea, eucalyptus, and local greenery softened the clean lines of the modern glass architecture. Zuri's media strategy had worked equally well. Business journalists circulated among investors. Executives from hotels, restaurants, and retail companies examined products, while photographers captured the energy of the room. But the biggest change came from Akinyi's suggestion. Instead of being pushed toward the edges, the participating women occupied the center. Their textiles, coffee, skincare products, ceramics, baskets, spices, and home accessories were the first things guests saw. Akinyi moved through the venue checking final details. Tonight, she was not wearing anything resembling her usual work uniform. Her emerald Katinze dress fell elegantly below her knees, tailored closely at the waist with structured sleeves and subtle gold embroidery along the neckline. She wore simple gold earrings and carried a small burgundy clutch. Her hair was styled neatly away from her face. She looked confident, not transformed, simply visible. Akinyi, a woman standing behind a display of handmade ceramic tableware, waved urgently. Akinyi approached. What happened, Muthoni? The buyer from the hotel group wants wholesale prices, but I only prepared retail figures. Do you know your production cost per piece? Yes. Then don't panic. Akinyi took a notepad. Calculate your minimum profitable order. Give him 3 volume levels instead of 1 discount. Muthoni stared at her. What if he says it's too expensive? Then ask what quantity would make the conversation worthwhile for both of you. What if I lose him? Akinyi smiled. A customer who requires to lose money is not automatically an opportunity. Muthoni breathed out slowly. All right, and don't apologize for your price before he questions it. That made the woman laugh. I do that. I noticed. Akinyi squeezed her hand gently. Go sell your work. As Akinyi turned away, she nearly walked into Kamau. He wore a dark navy suit with a patterned pocket square that subtly echoed Kenyan textile designs. You've been giving business advice all evening, he said. I've been preventing panic. Same thing tonight. Akinyi looked around. Shouldn't you be speaking to your investors? I have. Then speak to more. Kamau smiled. You're very determined to get rid of me. I'm determined to make sure everyone does what they came here to do. And what did you come here to do? Work. Kamau looked at her dress. That doesn't look like your usual working outfit. Akinyi's eyebrow rose. Women are capable of working in attractive clothes, Kamau. I walked directly into that one. Yes, he laughed. Before he could continue, Nyambura called him from across the room. I'm being rescued. You're being summoned. Kamau walked away. Akinyi turned toward the refreshment area. Zuri stood there in a sophisticated sapphire gown, speaking with 2 media executives. When the conversation ended, she approached Akinyi. Her eyes moved slowly over the emerald dress. You look surprisingly sophisticated tonight. Akinyi paused. The words themselves sounded complimentary. The tone did not. Thank you. Zuri smiled. That collar suits you. I almost didn't recognize you without the house around you. Akinyi understood perfectly. She had heard variations of the same sentence before. You speak surprisingly well. You're very polished for someone in your position. You don't look like a housekeeper. Compliments with small doors hidden inside them. Doors designed to remind a woman exactly where someone believed she belonged. Akinyi adjusted the clasp of her clutch. There is nothing surprising about dignity, Zuri. Zuri's smile weakened. Excuse me? Some people simply notice it late. Neither woman raised her voice. Nearby guests continued talking. Zuri glanced around. I was complimenting you. I thanked you. You seem determined to interpret everything I say as an insult. No, Akinyi's voice remained even. I simply stopped pretending not to recognize one when it arrives wearing good manners. Zuri stared at her. For a moment, Akinyi saw something more complicated than arrogance in her expression. Defensiveness, perhaps even embarrassment. You think I look down on you. I think you have decided certain rooms naturally belong to women like you. And you think there's something wrong with knowing where you belong? Akinyi considered that. No, I think there's something dangerous about deciding where another woman belongs. Behind a decorative partition, Kamau stopped walking. Nyambura had called him, but another guest had intercepted her. He had unintentionally heard enough. Zuri did not know. She folded her arms. You're suddenly very confident because Nyambura invited you to sit at one dinner and Kamau has started noticing you. Akinyi's expression changed. Not from embarrassment, from disappointment. My confidence existed before either of those things happened. Zuri opened her mouth. Akinyi continued, and if Kamau stopped noticing me tomorrow, I would still wake up as the same woman. That silenced her. Akinyi looked toward the exhibition floor. You have built an impressive career, Zuri. You shouldn't need another woman to appear smaller for you to feel successful. The words landed differently. Zuri looked away. For the first time, her expression carried no superiority, only discomfort. Akinyi began to leave. Akinyi, she stopped. Zuri hesitated. I worked very hard to enter rooms like this. Akinyi turned back. I believe you. You don't know what people expected from me. No. And sometimes when you fight for a seat long enough, you become protective of the table. Akinyi softened slightly. I understand. Zuri looked at her. Do you? Yes. But protecting your seat doesn't require pulling someone else's chair away. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Then Akinyi walked toward the exhibition area. Kamau stepped away before she could see him. What unsettled him was not that Zuri had insulted Akinyi. It was that Akinyi had clearly experienced such remarks many times before, and people like him rarely noticed because the words were delivered politely. Later, he found his mother watching several businesswomen exchange contact details with hotel buyers. You heard them, Nyambura said quietly. Kama looked at her. How did you know? I know my son. He watched Akinyi across the room as she helped Muthoni finalize her first wholesale agreement. I thought respect was simple, Kamau said. It is. Then why do people make it complicated? Nyambura looked toward him. Because many people are respectful upward. Kamau frowned. Upward to the wealthy, the powerful, the useful. She turned her gaze toward Akinyi. Character is revealed by whether that respect also travels in the other direction. Across the room, Muthoni suddenly embraced Akinyi after securing her order. Akinyi laughed and stepped back, immediately pointing toward the businesswoman's own products as if reminding her who deserved the credit. Kamau watched her. For years, he had believed he treated everyone well because he was never deliberately cruel. Tonight, he began understanding that fairness demanded more than avoiding cruelty. Sometimes it required noticing the quiet assumptions that decided whose voice mattered, whose work counted, and whose presence needed justification. And for the first time, Kamau wondered how many times Akinyi had been made to feel invisible inside his world, while he had been standing close enough to see it. Akinyi Wanjala stood beside the tall windows of the Muriithi villa's private study, holding an ivory envelope that had changed the shape of her future. Outside, Nairobi's sunlight warmed the jacaranda-lined garden. Inside, the room smelled faintly of polished cedar and fresh coffee. She read the letter again. Operations Manager. The position was with Savannah Crest Residencies, a growing company managing luxury apartments and boutique villas across Nairobi. The salary was almost twice what she currently earned. More importantly, the position offered something money alone could not give her: a direction. Akinyi had met one of Savannah Crest's directors at the Women's Enterprise fundraiser. They had spoken briefly about vendor management, hospitality standards, and staff development. She had assumed the conversation ended there. It had not. You look as if that paper either made you very happy or very worried. Akinyi turned. Nyambura stood in the doorway wearing an elegant royal blue dress with gold earrings. Possibly both. That usually means something important has happened. Akinyi handed her the letter. Nyambura read it without speaking. When she finished, congratulations. Akinyi searched her face. That's all? What were you expecting? I don't know, perhaps disappointment? Akinyi smiled faintly. A little. Nyambura walked toward the desk. Why would I be disappointed that another company finally recognized what this household has benefited from for years? Akinyi looked down at the offer. They want an answer soon. And what does Akinyi want? That is what I'm trying to decide. No, Nyambura's voice remained gentle. You're trying to decide how everyone else will feel about what Akinyi wants. The observation struck uncomfortably close. Before Akinyi could respond, footsteps sounded in the corridor. Kamau entered carrying a leather folder. Mother, I need your signature on. He noticed Akinyi, then the envelope. What happened? Nyambura looked at Akinyi. Tell him. Akinyi hesitated. I received a job offer. Kamau's expression brightened. That's good. At Savannah Crest Residency. His smile faded slightly. I know them. They want me as operations manager. That's excellent. They also want me to live here. The room became quiet. Kamau placed his folder on the desk. Leave, the position is full-time. I understand what full-time means. Akinyi almost smiled. Kama did not. When would you go? If I accept, after completing my notice period. He looked at his mother. Nyambura picked up her coffee. This conversation has nothing to do with me. Then she walked toward the door. Mother, she stopped. Yes? You're just leaving? Two adults are perfectly capable of having a conversation without an elderly woman supervising them. You are not elderly when you want to win an argument. Exactly. Nyambura disappeared down the corridor. Akinyi suppressed a laugh. Kamau did not notice. You're seriously considering this? Yes. Why? Akinyi stared at him. Why wouldn't I? I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? Kamau ran a hand across his jaw. You already have stability here. My family trusts you. You have responsibility. If you need a better salary, we can discuss it. Akinyi's expression changed. Kamau, what? Listen to what you just said. I'm trying to give you reasons to stay. That is exactly the problem. He frowned. I don't understand. You're treating my future like a staffing problem. That isn't fair, isn't it? Akinyi placed the envelope on the desk. You heard that another company sees me as an operations manager. And your first instinct was to offer me more money to continue being useful here. Kamau went silent. I value you, I know. Then why does that sound like an accusation? Because valuing someone and making room for their growth are not always the same thing. Kamau looked toward the garden. For the first time since entering, his confidence seemed to disappear. I thought you were happy here. I am grateful here. Those aren't the same? No, Akinyi's answer was soft. That doesn't mean I've been miserable. Your mother has treated me with dignity. The staff has become like family. This house gave me stability when I needed it. She's picked up the letter again. But gratitude should not become a cage simply because the cage is comfortable. Kamau looked at her. I would never try to trap you, not intentionally. The words made him uncomfortable. Akinyi continued. Sometimes people with good intentions still expect others to remain where they are most convenient. Kamau leaned against the desk. So what does this position give you that we can't prove? Of what? That I can walk into a professional environment where no one knows your mother, no one knows this house, and still earn my place. You don't need to prove that. To you, perhaps. She touched the envelope. I need to prove it to myself. Kamau studied her. Then another realization seemed to reach him. Is this about the business you want to build? Akinyi looked surprised. You remembered. I listen occasionally. Recently, he accepted the correction. Recently, Akinyi walked toward the window. If I want to manage my own residency someday, I need experience beyond one household. Savannah Crest manages multiple properties, budgets, staff teams, and client contracts. So this is a step. Yes, not the destination. No. Kamau remained silent for several moments. Then he asked the question that had been bothering him from the beginning. Do you want to leave? Akinyi turned. I want to grow. That wasn't my question. It is my answer. Something in Kamau's face softened. He looked at the woman standing before him and realized how selfish his first reaction had been. He had imagined the villa without Akinyi. He had imagined his mother missing her. He had imagined events becoming more difficult and, more privately, he had imagined losing the chance to know her. Everything he had imagined concerned what her departure would take from him. Almost nothing concerned what leaving might give her. I'm sorry, he said. Akinyi blinked. For what? For making your opportunity about my inconvenience. She studied him carefully. That is a better answer. Still not a good one. It's improving. Kamau smiled. Then his expression became serious again. If you accept, I won't ask my mother to match the offer. Good. I won't call Savannah Crest. Very good. And I won't pretend I'm happy about losing you from this house. Akinyi tilted her head. Why? The question caught him unprepared. Kamau opened his mouth. Nothing came. Akinyi waited. He finally laughed quietly. I don't have an answer that wouldn't complicate this conversation. Then don't give me one yet. She picked up the envelope. Kamau watched her move toward the doorway. Akinyi, she turned. Whatever you decide, make sure it's yours. For the first time since receiving the offer, the tension left her shoulders. Thank you. Then she walked away. Kamau remained alone in the study. Only days earlier, he had begun seeing Akinyi differently. Now, just as he wanted to know her better, she might be leaving his world. His old instincts told him to offer more money, create a better title, or use influence to make staying attractive. But Akinyi had taught him something he had never needed to learn in business. Sometimes caring about someone did not mean finding the right offer to make them stay. Sometimes it meant respecting the reason they needed to leave. Akinyi Wanjala entered the Muriithi villa's sunlit library carrying the burgundy folder she had kept private for nearly 2 years. Nyambura sat beside the glass doors overlooking the garden, dressed in an elegant plum-colored gown with delicate gold embroidery. A pot of Kenyan tea rested on the low table beside her. "You brought it," Nyambura said. Akinyi glanced at the folder. "I almost changed my mind. That usually means something matters." Akinyi sat opposite her. She had accepted the position at Savannah Crest Residences. The decision felt right. It also terrified her. For years, the Muriithi household had been familiar ground. She knew every supplier, every room, every complicated preference, and every small problem that could become a large one if ignored. Savannah Crest would be different. Multiple properties, corporate clients, contracts, budgets larger than anything she had personally managed. But there was another reason she had accepted. Akinyi opened the folder. On the first page was a simple name, Imara Residence Management. Nyambura read it carefully. "What does Imara mean to you?" "Straight good." Nyambura turned the page. "What am I looking at?" "The business I eventually want to build." Akinyi leaned forward. "Private residence management, boutique villas, short-stay luxury properties, staff training, vendor coordination, guest preparation, household budgeting." Nyambura continued reading. "You've done your research." "I've tried." "How long?" "Nearly 2 years." Nyambura stopped. "You are planning this while running my house." "Usually after running your house." That earned a smile. Nyambura reached a page filled with projected costs. Then her smile disappeared. "This number is wrong." Akinyi stiffened. "Which one?" "Staff insurance." Akinyi moved beside her. Nyambura pointed. "You've calculated salaries, transport allowances, and training. But your insurance estimate is too low if you intend to provide proper coverage." "I used figures from smaller companies." "Smaller companies often survive by making employees absorb costs business should carry." Akinyi looked at page. "I'll revise it." Nyambura turned another page. "And your payment terms?" "Clients pay monthly." "That wasn't my question." Akinyi paused. Nyambura tapped the paper. "What happens when a wealthy client decides your invoice can wait?" "I follow up." "And when following up fails?" Akinyi smiled nervously. "You're making this sound less exciting." "I'm trying to make sure excitement doesn't bankrupt you." Akinyi laughed. "That sounds like something you've experienced more than once." Nyambura closed the folder. "What do you need from me?" The question came so directly that Akinyi hesitated. "Advice." "Only advice?" "Yes." Nyambura studied her. "You don't want investment? No loan? No, why?" Akinyi looked toward the garden. "Because I want to know whether the idea works before someone powerful makes it easier." Nyambura remained silent. Akinyi continued. "I've spent years around wealthy people. I've seen good ideas become businesses because someone made one telephone call." "And that bothers you?" "No, connections are part of business." "Then what bothers you?" "Not knowing." Akinyi touched the folder. "If Imara succeeds one day, I want to understand why. If it fails, I want to understand that too." Nyambura nodded slowly. "Good." Akinyi looked surprised. "You agree?" "No." Nyambura poured tea. "I think refusing all help can become another form of pride." Akinyi considered that. "But I agree that you should know what your business is worth before money starts flattering you." She handed Akinyi a cup. "So I will not invest." "Thank you." "I haven't finished." Akinyi smiled. "Of course not. I know someone." Akinyi immediately shook her head. "No, you don't even know what I'm offering. If it involves someone writing a check, it involves someone asking unpleasant questions." Akinyi stopped. Nyambura smiled. "Her name is Dr. Wairimu Karanja. She advises hospitality businesses and has spent years helping women-led companies build proper financial systems." "That sounds expensive." She owes me lunch, Akinyi laughed. I'm serious, so am I. Nyambura reached for her phone. I'll introduce you. After that, you stand on your own. That I can accept. A voice came from the doorway. Accept what? Kamau stood there holding 2 property reports. Akinyi instinctively closed the folder. Kamau noticed. That looked suspicious. It's none of your business, Nyambura said. Now it definitely sounds suspicious. Akinyi smiled. Nyambura looked between them. Akinyi is developing a company. Kamau's expression changed immediately. A company? Mother, what? You are going to discover it eventually. Kamau looked at Akinyi. What kind? Akinyi hesitated before reopening the folder. Residence management. Kamau stepped closer. You're serious? I hope so. He examined only the page she turned toward him. You could have told me. I could have. And I didn't. Kamau accepted the boundary with a small nod. What do you need? There it was again, the instinct to solve. Akinyi looked at him. Experience I could introduce you to. Kamau stopped himself. Nyambura hid a smile behind her teacup. Akinyi waited. He exhaled. You are about to tell me not to interfere. I didn't say anything. You didn't have to. Kamau placed his report on the table. All right. No introductions. No investment. No convenient contracts from Muriithi Properties. Akinyi raised an eyebrow. You're learning. Slowly, very slowly. He laughed. Then his voice became more serious. I do have one question. What? Do you believe in it? Akinyi looked down at the name on the first page. For months, she had described Imara as something she hoped to build someday. Perhaps that language had protected her from failure. Someday required nothing. Belief did. Yes, she said finally. I believe in it. Kamau nodded. Then I hope you build it. No offer followed, no promise, no attempt to purchase a place in her future. Just respect. Akinyi found herself unexpectedly moved by that. After Kamau left, Nyambura reopened the business plan. You see? What? A man does not always need to rescue a woman to support her. Akinyi smiled. He nearly tried. Yes, Nyambura laughed. But growth is rarely elegant at the beginning. She pushed the folder back toward Akinyi. Now revise those numbers. Akinyi looked at the pages she had spent so many quiet evenings creating. For the first time, the plan no longer felt like a private dream hidden inside a burgundy folder. It felt possible. Not because Nyambura would finance it, not because Kamau could open doors, but because Akinyi was finally willing to let her idea face difficult questions without protecting it from difficult answers. She picked up her pen. For years, she had built beautiful spaces for other people to live inside. Now she was beginning to understand that the next thing she needed to build was a life spacious enough for her own ambitions. Warm light spilled from the pendant lamps above the Muriithi dining table, illuminating polished walnut, hand-woven runners, and low arrangements of white orchids. It was Akinyi's final family dinner before leaving the villa. She had expected something small. Nyambura apparently disagreed. Akinyi entered wearing a flowing burnt orange kitenge dress with delicate gold patterns along the sleeves. For once, she carried no tablets, no keys, no list of instructions. She was simply a guest. Kamau noticed immediately. You're not carrying anything. Akinyi glanced down. My handbag. I mean something to organize. Would you like me to find a problem? No, then enjoy the miracle. Kamau smiled. Across the room, Zuri stood near the glass wall in an elegant midnight blue gown. Thandi wore a structured emerald dress and was discussing the fundraiser with Nyambura. Neither woman knew exactly why they had been invited. Neither did Akinyi. Dinner began pleasantly. They spoke about the fundraiser. Several women who had exhibited products had received promising wholesale inquiries. Muthoni, the ceramic maker Akinyi had helped, was negotiating with a boutique hotel group. That was your idea, Kamau said. Akinyi shook her head. Her ceramics earned the interest. You created the structure that helped people notice them. Those are different things. Nyambura smiled. That is why giving credit properly matters. Zuri looked toward Akinyi. I heard you accepted the Savannah Crest position. I did. Congratulations. Akinyi studied her for a moment. There was no hidden edge this time. Thank you. Zuri took a sip of water. It suits you. That almost sounded like a compliment. Zuri laughed. It was. I'm capable of growth too. Akinyi smiled. I'm glad. The tension between them had not vanished, but something had changed. They no longer needed to diminish one another to occupy the same room. After dinner, Nyambura placed her napkin beside her plate. There is something I would like to say. Kamau leaned back. That sentence never leads anywhere peaceful. Then perhaps you should improve your conscience. Sandy laughed. Nyambura looked around the table. When I invited everyone into this house, I believed I was helping my son answer a question. Kamau's expression became serious. What question? What kind of woman should share his life? Zuri lowered her glass. Akinyi immediately felt uncomfortable. Nyambura continued, I thought experience gave me the wisdom to recognize the answer before he could. Mother, let me finish. Kamau fell silent. Nyambura turned towards Zuri. You are intelligent, accomplished, and ambitious. None of those qualities should ever be treated as flaws simply because you are a woman. Zuri looked surprised. Nyambura turned towards Thandi. You have built a career across countries through discipline and courage. You should never make yourself smaller to make a marriage easier for someone else. Thandi nodded slowly. Then Nyambura looked at Akinyi. And you have spent years making other people's lives function while quietly building plans for your own. Akinyi lowered her eyes. Nyambura's voice softened. I admired that. Zuri shifted in her chair. Mrs. Muriithi, are you about to tell us which woman you believe Kamau should marry? The question was direct. Nyambura smiled. I once thought I would. The room went still. I was wrong. Kamau frowned. Nyambura turned toward him. A good woman is not a prize your mother hands you. Kamau said nothing. She is not a reward for your success. She is not accessory to your surname. And she is certainly not someone whose value increases because a wealthy man decides to notice her. Akinyi looked up. Nyambura continued. She is someone you must become worthy of choosing. Then she looked directly at Akinyi. And worthy of being chosen by. Kamau's eyes moved toward Akinyi. Akinyi felt every gaze at the table. Nyambura continued before anyone could speak. If you are asking which woman in this room I trust most deeply by character, my answer is Akinyi. Zuri's face changed. Thandi looked toward Akinyi. Kamau remained completely still, but Akinyi did not feel victorious. She felt exposed. Nyambura noticed. And that, she said firmly, does not mean Akinyi owes my son anything. Kamau looked at his mother. Nyambura met his gaze. You hear me? I mean it. I know. She does not owe you romance because you finally saw qualities that existed before you noticed them. Akinyi's expression softened. Nyambura turned back toward her. And you do not owe this family your future because we appreciate what you have given us. The words reached somewhere deep inside Akinyi. For years, gratitude had been one of the strongest forces in her life. She was grateful for employment, grateful for stability, grateful for Nyambura's kindness. Sometimes gratitude could become so heavy that leaving felt like betrayal. Nyambura had just removed that weight. Thank you, Akinyi said quietly. Zuri broke the silence. So there was never really a competition? Nyambura raised an eyebrow. Did I ever tell you there was? No, you assumed. Zuri looked almost embarrassed. I suppose I did. Thandi smiled. We all did. Kamau looked at his mother. You could have explained this earlier and robbed you of several useful lessons. Nyambura shook her head. Absolutely not. Laughter moved gently around the table. Then Zuri looked toward Akinyi. I owe you something. Akinyi, an apology. The room became quiet again. Zuri folded her hands. I spent years entering rooms where people assumed I was there because of beauty, connections, or someone standing beside me. Akinyi listened. And somewhere along the way, I started deciding which women had earned the right to enter those rooms. Her voice lowered. That was unfair. Akinyi nodded. It was. Zuri smiled faintly. You could make this easier. I could. A small laugh escaped Thandi. Then Akinyi softened. But I appreciate the apology. Kamau watched them. No humiliation, no revenge. No woman defeated so another could be declared victorious. Just an uncomfortable truth being acknowledged. Later, as everyone moved toward the lounge, Kamau approached Akinyi near the glass doors. So? My mother has apparently decided not to choose my wife. That must be devastating. I'll recover. Akinyi smiled. Kamau became serious, but she said something I can't ignore. Akinyi knew exactly what he meant, Kamau. I'm not asking you for anything tonight. She studied his face. Good. But before you leave, there is something I need to tell you. Akinyi felt her heartbeat change. Then tell me when you're certain you're saying it because it's true. Not because your mother gave you permission to see me differently. Kamau absorbed the words. Then he nodded. That's fair. Akinyi walked toward the others. Kamau remained behind. His mother had spent weeks observing the women around him. But her final lesson had not been about identifying the perfect wife. It had been about something harder. No matter how wealthy, successful, or respected a man became, he was never entitled to a good woman simply because he had finally learned how valuable she was. She still had to choose him, too. Akinyi Wanjala carried the last burgundy suitcase down the wide staircase of the Muriithi villa. Morning light streamed through the glass walls, warming the creamstone floor and the carved wooden panels that framed the entrance hall. For years, Akinyi had walked through this space carrying grocery lists, flower arrangements, guest schedules, invoices, forgotten jackets, and problems nobody else knew existed. Today, she carried something different, her own future. She wore a tailored cobalt blue dress with kitenje detailing along the waist and sleeves. Her gold earrings had belonged to her mother. Near the entrance stood 2 boxes containing books, framed photographs, and the burgundy folder holding the first plans for Imara residence management. Akinyi placed her suitcase beside them. You really packed everything, she turned. Kamau stood near the corridor in dark trousers and a crisp white shirt, his jacket folded over one arm. I thought that was generally how living worked. You're enjoying this? A little. He smiled, but sadness remained in his eyes. Savannah Crest is lucky. They haven't seen me on a difficult Monday yet. I have, and I'm still recommending you, Akinyi laughed. For a moment, the heaviness between them disappeared. Then Kamau placed his jacket over a chair. Can we talk? Akinyi looked toward the front doors. My driver will be here soon. I won't take long, she studied him. All right. They walked into the smaller garden lounge. Akinyi knew this room well. She had chosen its linen curtains, negotiated the restoration of its wooden cabinets, and once spent an entire afternoon finding replacement fabric after a guest spilled coffee across one of the chairs. Soon, none of those details would be her responsibility. The thought felt strangely peaceful. Kamau remained standing. You told me not to say anything until I knew why I was saying it. I remember. I know now. Akinyi's fingers tightened slightly around her handbag. Kamau took a breath. I have feelings for you. There was no dramatic declaration. No flowers. No ring. Just the truth. Akinyi looked at him quietly. Kamau continued. I don't know exactly when they changed. Maybe that dinner when my mother asked you to sit down. Maybe the fundraiser. Maybe they existed before and I was too distracted to recognize them. Akinyi lowered her gaze. But I know I don't want you to leave without telling you. Kamau, I'm not asking you to give up the job. She looked up. I learned that lesson. Good. I'm asking whether there is any chance we could find out what this is. Akinyi said nothing. Kamau stepped closer, though he kept enough distance between them that she never felt cornered. You don't have to answer immediately. I do know my answer. Hope appeared briefly in his expression. Akinyi hated that she was about to disappoint him. No, Kamau went still. Akinyi saw the answer reach him slowly. No chance? That isn't what I said. Then what are you saying? I'm saying I can't stay. I told you I'm not asking you to give up Savannah Crest. You're asking me to begin something with you while I'm still standing inside your family's home. Kamau frowned. Why does that matter? Because I need to know who I am outside it. You already know who you are. I know who I am here. She looked around the beautiful room. Here, I'm Akinyi who solves everything. Akinyi your mother trusts. Akinyi the staff calls when something breaks. Akinyi who knows which cupboard contains the good china and which florist overcharges during wedding season. Kamau almost smiled. Akinyi did not. But I need to meet the woman who walks into a company where nobody knows this family. You think being with me would stop that? Maybe not. Then why assume it would? Because your world is powerful, Kamau. Her voice remained gentle. Doors open around your surname before you touch them. Kama looked away. And if I stay emotionally tied to this house while trying to build something outside it, I may never know whether I left at all. He understood. That made the conversation harder. What if I promise not to interfere? You mean it? I do, I know. Akinyi smiled sadly. But relationships are not built from promises made before anyone knows what will be difficult. Kama sat down. So you're rejecting me because I'm wealthy? Akinyi gave him a look. That would be as shallow as choosing you because you're wealthy. Fair, she sat across from him. I'm not rejecting who you are. Feel similar from this chair. Akinyi almost laughed. Instead, she leaned forward. If I stay now, I will never know whether I stayed because I loved you or because your wealth finally made room for me. Kamau looked directly at her. And you need to know. Yes, silence settled between them. Then he asked, what happens to us? I don't know. That's uncomfortable. Growth usually is. He laughed quietly. You've been spending too much time with my mother, possibly. Kamau's expression softened. Is there someone else? No. Do you have feelings for me? Akinyi hesitated. That hesitation answered him. Akinyi. Yes, she admitted. Kamau breathed out. That somehow makes this worse. It makes it honest. So what am I supposed to do? She considered the question. Live your life. That sounds suspiciously like goodbye. It is goodbye. His face fell. For now. Kamau looked up. Akinyi stood. If what you feel is real, it doesn't need me to abandon an opportunity to prove it. And if you discover you don't want me, then you deserve to know that too. He rose slowly. For a moment, they simply stood facing each other. Kamau could have offered her anything, a position, an apartment, investment, security. Instead, he stepped aside. I hope Savannah Crest knows how fortunate they are. Akinyi smiled. I intend to remind them. When she returned to the entrance hall, Nyambura was waiting beside her luggage. The older woman opened her arms. Akinyi hugged her tightly. I'm proud of you, Nyambura whispered, for leaving, for choosing without fear. Akinyi pulled back. That doesn't mean I'm not afraid. Courage rarely means that. Outside, a car waited. Kamau stood several steps behind his mother. Akinyi picked up the burgundy folder herself. She looked once at the beautiful villa where she had spent years building comfort for other people. Then she walked through the doors. No man had rescued her. No hidden fortune had transformed her. No marriage had elevated her status. She was leaving with exactly what she had arrived with in the most important sense, herself. Only now, she understood herself did not mean rejecting love. Sometimes it was the only way to discover whether love could meet her as an equal. Akinyi Wanjala stood inside the reception area of Imara Residence Management and watched one of her employees carefully place a brass vase on a walnut console table. 2 centimeters to the left, Akinyi said. The young woman moved it. Akinyi tilted her head. Now it looks worse. You told me to move it. I know, I was wrong. The woman laughed. Can I put it back? Please rescue us both. Akinyi smiled as she looked around the office. Imara was not enormous. There were no marble fountains, private elevators, or dramatic views of Nairobi's skyline. The company occupied a modest but elegant suite with glass partitions, warm wooden furniture, woven Kenyan artwork, and shelves displaying ceramics made by local artisans. But the name on the wall belonged to her. That still made Akinyi pause sometimes. Her journey had not unfolded quickly. Working at Savannah Crest had challenged nearly everything she thought she knew. Managing several properties was different from running one household. She had dealt with demanding clients, staff shortages, delayed suppliers, complicated budgets, and mistakes that could not be solved by simply remaining calm. She had learned. She had failed. She had learned again. Eventually, she had left Savannah Crest on good terms and opened Imara. Her first clients had not appeared magically. She had pitched, followed up, been ignored, negotiated lost contracts, won smaller ones, then earned referrals. Now Imara managed several private residencies and 2 boutique villas. With a small team, Akinyi could actually afford to pay properly, not an empire. A beginning? She turned. Her assistant, Wambui, stood near the entrance. There's someone here to see you. Do I have another meeting? No. Wambui smiled strangely. He says he doesn't need an appointment because he brought coffee. Akinyi already knew. Send him in. Kamau entered carrying 2 takeaway cups. He wore dark trousers, a white shirt, and a lightweight navy jacket. Akinyi folded her arms. You're bribing reception now? I'm building strategic relationships with coffee? Most successful negotiations in Nairobi begin with coffee. Wambui laughed as she disappeared into the adjoining office. Kamau handed Akinyi a cup. No sugar, you remembered. I've had practice. That was true. Kamau had not disappeared after Akinyi left the Muriithi villa, but neither had he pursued her relentlessly. He had given her what she requested. Space, their relationship rebuilt itself slowly. Occasional messages became conversations. Conversations became lunches. Lunches became evenings when neither wanted to leave first. He never contacted Savannah Crest to influence her career. When she launched Imara, he did not offer investment. He did not send clients secretly. He simply attended her small opening celebration, carrying flowers, and stood near the back while Nyambura cried enough for everyone. Akinyi walked toward the window. How was your meeting? Long, productive? Ask me after the contracts are signed. Kamau leaned against the desk. And your day? One client wants us to reduce management fees while adding 3 services. What did you say? Nondikama smiled. You've become ruthless. I've become profitable. Much more frightening. Akinyi laughed. Then Kamau noticed the framed document beside her desk. You finally signed the new property this week. That makes how many? Enough to keep me busy. Akinyi, she smiled. 7 residences and 2 villas. Pride crossed his face. That's incredible. It's sustainable. Even better. Akinyi appreciated that answer. There had been a time when Kamau measured success by scale. More properties, larger developments, bigger numbers. Now he understood why sustainable meant more to her than impressive. He looked around. You built this. We built it. Who is we? My team. Kamau nodded. Good answer. You sound like your mother. That is deeply upsetting. They both laughed. Then the room became quieter. Kamau placed his coffee down. There's something I want to ask you. Akinyi immediately narrowed her eyes. That sounds dangerous. No ring. She glanced at his hands. You checked. Of course. Fair. Kamau walked closer. I've been thinking about what you said when you left. I said many things. You said you needed to know who are outside my family's world. Akinyi became still. And, do you know now? She looked around the office, at the company name, at the business plan that had once existed only inside a burgundy folder, at the desks occupied by women whose salaries depended partly on decisions she made carefully every month. Yes, Kamau nodded. Then who are you? Akinyi considered the question. I'm still figuring that out. He smiled. But I know I don't need someone else's house to tell me where I belong. That sounds like progress. It feels like freedom. Kamau looked at her for a moment. Then I have another question. Here it comes. What would it take for you to believe I'm here for you, and not because my mother once decided you were the woman I should notice? Akinyi did not answer immediately. Kamau continued. I know what people might say. Wealthy man notices housekeeper. Mother approves. They fall in love. Akinyi smiled faintly. That is a very convenient version. It leaves out the part where the housekeeper rejected him. My favorite part. Mine required adjustment. She laughed. Then Kamau became serious. I don't want a convenient story. Akinyi looked into his eyes. What do you want? You, the word was simple. Not because you're good for my family. Not because my mother trusts you. Not because you built Imara. He paused. I want the woman who tells me when I'm wrong. The woman who can leave even when staying would be easier. The woman who doesn't need me but still might decide there is room for me. Akinyi felt something soften inside her. What would it take? He asked again. She knew the answer. Time. Kamau nodded. Then time is what I'll give you. Akinyi smiled. You already have. That caught him by surprise. She stepped closer and took his hand. For so long, Akinyi had feared that loving Kamau might pull her back into a world where she would always be introduced through him. But standing inside the company she had built, she finally understood something. Independence was not the absence of love. It was the ability to love without disappearing. I'm ready to see where this goes, she said. Kamau squeezed her hand. Slowly? Very your definition of slowly concerns me. It should. He laughed. Outside the glass windows, Nairobi continued moving around them. There was no audience waiting for an announcement. No wealthy mother choosing a bride, no competition, no woman standing victorious while another stood defeated. There were simply two adults who had spent enough time becoming themselves to finally approach each other without ownership, rescue, or obligation. Akinyi had once entered the Muriithi household as a woman whose work made other people's lives easier. She had left because she needed to discover what her own life could become. And now Kamau was no longer asking her to enter his world. He was asking whether they could build something between their two worlds. These times, Akinyi did not walk away. She chose him. And because she had first learned how to choose herself, the choice finally felt like love. Akinyi and Kamau did not rush toward marriage simply because they had finally admitted their love. They spent the following months learning how to share their lives without asking either person to surrender the lives they had already built. Imara Residence Management continued growing steadily, and Akinyi expanded her team while creating a training program for women seeking careers in hospitality and property management. Kamau supported her without purchasing influence in her company, while Akinyi learned that accepting emotional support did not make her less independent. When Kamau eventually proposed beside Lake Naivasha, there were no photographers, business partners, or extravagant displays, only jacaranda-colored evening skies, a quiet dinner, and Nyambura waiting nearby with joyful tears. Akinyi accepted because marriage no longer felt like entering Kamau's world. They were creating a new one together. At their wedding, Zuri attended with genuine warmth, while Thandi helped design an elegant celebration filled with Kenyan textiles, flowers, music, and family traditions. Nyambura embraced Akinyi afterward and whispered, "I once believed I chose the right woman for my son." Akinyi smiled. Nyambura continued, "But I understand now. The beautiful part is that you chose each other." Akinyi's journey teaches us that being overlooked does not make a woman less valuable, just as being noticed by a powerful person does not suddenly make her more valuable. Her dignity existed before Kamau recognized it, before Nyambura defended it, and before Imara became successful. Too often, women are encouraged to measure progress through approval, being chosen for a promotion, welcomed into an influential circle, admired by a successful man, or finally respected by people who once underestimated them. But Akinyi discovered something more lasting. Validation is meaningful, yet it should never become the foundation of self-worth. She also learned that independence does not require refusing every helping hand. Healthy support gives a woman more room to become herself. Control asks her to become smaller. Kamau's growth carries another lesson. Loving someone is not possessing her potential or solving every difficulty for her. Sometimes love means respecting a decision that does not benefit you. Zuri's change reminds us that women do not need to diminish one another to prove they deserve a seat at the table. There is room for ambition, softness, success, family, independence, and love. The strongest relationship is not built when one person rescues another, but when two complete lives freely choose to grow together.